Now that you've all had a day of learning yesterday, I'm Rod Diridon, by the way, co-chair with Ray LaHood of the High Speed Rail Coalition, and Anthony Fox. Anthony couldn't be with us today, and our great good friend Norm Mineta, who could not be with us either. We're the three co-chairs, and we'll all miss Norm. The duty today is for me to introduce the panel that you're going to see, and I'll do that very quickly, and then I'll introduce someone we're really proud of. But the panel that you're going to be hearing from is former Secretary Ray LaHood, who has been a great champion of the coalition and a great leader. Ray, thank you for all you've done throughout your life. Jim Costa, who I know for a long time, we refer to him as the father of high-speed rail in California. He carried the bill and kicked the behinds that needed to be kicked in order to deliver that to us in the state, and we appreciate it, Jim, and appreciate your work back here. Meg Cederroth, who is the planning director for the High-Speed Rail Authority in California, is pinch hitting for Brian, who couldn't be here. His mother is seriously ill, and family comes first. I think that's why we love him so much. And now let me introduce to you the person we are really proud of in California. He came up from the kind of beginnings that we all came up from, a hard life, and did the work, became academically excellent, and then became a public servant. And now he's here representing us in Washington, D.C., our great U.S. Senator Alex Padilla.
Thank you, Rod, and good morning, everybody. Good morning. All right, no, it's East Coast time. Is that coffee kicked in yet? Good morning, everybody. Good morning. All right, if you need to reach for that second cup, I will not be offended. I might join you, actually. Well, thank you all for being here. This is actually a really exciting time for high-speed rail, not just in California, but maybe especially in California. Before I begin, I do want to thank just everybody involved. As you guys have been together since yesterday and throughout today, you'll know this is a great cross-section of everybody who needs to be working together and is working together to make high-speed rail happen. It's organizers, it's labor leaders, it's executives, and of course, government officials and the workers that are going to be building out the infrastructure, all convening here to talk about how far we've come. And where we're going and what it takes to get there, to fulfill these dreams of high-speed rail, because they're no longer just dreams. It is becoming reality. I do want to take a moment to give special acknowledgement to Brian Kelly, CEO of the California High-Speed Rail Authority. Our prayers are with him and his family, obviously. But I've had the pleasure of knowing Brian since my days in the California State Senate. He was working for the president pro tem of the Senate at the time, the Chuck Schumer, if you will, of the California State Senate when I was serving there. And I remember not just the conversations after the 2008 ballot measure in California, but some critical times along the project's path. You know, it's rare when a large, ambitious infrastructure project falls a little bit behind schedule and a little bit under budget. In one of those rare instances, it actually happened in California. We'd be in the back of Senate chambers, balancing budgets and wondering, can we still keep pumping public investment in to keep this project going in California? So when he was first selected to take on the position of CEO at the authority, it was yet one of those challenging times for the project. But I knew, I had faith in Brian himself, knowing his commitment to the project, his approach to public service, his professionalism, his integrity, and I'm not surprised that the project is now where it is, given his leadership. So I wanted to take a moment to thank him for his service and his tour of duty. Now, before we welcome the panel that's going to be addressing you this morning, I just want to say a few words about where we are with high-speed rail in California and how thankful I am. Not just because as an Angelino, all too familiar with Los Angeles traffic and our need to improve how people move about the city and the region, but as someone who has traveled the state, yes, all 58 counties and beyond, not just what the need is to give people better options for moving from Los Angeles to the Bay Area to the Central Valley and everywhere in between, but what opportunities come with better connecting communities. I think that's what's really exciting about where we're going with high-speed rail infrastructure. But we know that with a lot of the funding that's there in place now, we need to make sure that we do it right. It's not in my talking point, staff, but in my mind, it's not just about high-speed rail in California. And now with the Brightline project connecting the Los Angeles region to Las Vegas, I've done that drive many a time too, as a youngster and as a parent. Are we there yet? Are we there yet? When Brightline's completed, we'll be able to say we're almost there. We're going to be there soon. But these are really initial legs in what I think is an eventual national network, right? That's really the vision here. In those tough times of should we continue to commit to this project? Should we continue to invest in these projects? My thought is this. I mean, you've all traveled the world, and you've seen high-speed rail in Asia, in Europe, throughout the country, throughout the world. Can you envision the United States of America 100 years from now without a high-speed rail network? I can't. Certainly not our growing population, our growing economy. And so we know, based on other experiences with infrastructure, the longer we wait, the harder and more expensive it's going to be to build. So let's get to it. And we are getting to it. But as we do it, we know it's going to be quality workmanship, quality train cars, quality service for our riders initially so that it gains in popularity and gains in usage. And I know it's possible because of the tremendous leadership and experience that's gathered here at this annual conference. Just a couple of other things before I turn it over to the panel. Kudos, really, to President Biden and Vice President Harris. Previous administrations, plural, both Democrats and Republicans have been talking about infrastructure generally for years and years and years. This administration and this Congress got it done. So give them a round of applause. And the audacity to think of infrastructure more broadly. It would have been safe to stick to just bridges and highways and tunnels and maybe some roads and legacy public transit within major cities. But to think futuristically, to think high-speed rail, to connect regions, not just communities, to be part of tackling climate change was really ambitious. And that's what has led to more recently, another $6 billion. $3 billion for the California High-Speed Rail Project, the Brightline Project, the beneficiary. Again, I'm looking forward to getting to Las Vegas, maybe getting home from Las Vegas a little bit quicker. And so we are entering an exciting year for not just infrastructure talk, not just infrastructure debate, but groundbreakings, construction, and ribbon cuttings for the next decade. And glad that California has been a key part in pioneering and persisting to get us to where we are with these critical investments. So I will leave it at that. Just reminding us of that movie, The Field of Dreams, right? If you're a baseball fan, Kevin Costner, Field of Dreams. He said, if you build it, they will come. And I truly believe that's going to be the case when these projects are done, and we're going to be building on them. So thank you for your leadership, for your commitment, for all that you're doing. And with that, let me turn it over to Meg Cedar-Roth with the California High-Speed Rail Authority to kick us into our panel. Thank you all very much.
Good morning, everyone. That was a fantastic warm-up from Senator Padilla. I'm Meg Cedar-Roth. I'm the Director of Planning and Sustainability with the High-Speed Rail Authority, and I am honored to talk to this great room about the high-speed rail progress and our path to an operating segment. I am going to start by clicking the famous green button, and you'll get a video any moment now. There we go. There is no sound, but all of you can imagine sitting on a high-speed train, whisking your way across the Central Valley, across these fine structures that are already completed across the Central Valley, the Wasco Viaduct just outside of Wasco, California. In the south, the Cedar Avenue Viaduct, which supplies an entry point from the south into the city of Fresno. With the double arches, I will not make Brian's joke about the double arches, but I think you all know what it is. This is the Hanford Viaduct. It's the location of one of our stations that'll connect the region of Tulare and Kings County to the broader state via high-speed rail. The Tule River Viaduct, which is almost complete as well. Hear the sound of the birds. And that's it. So I think, yes, give a round of applause. Great. So I love that everyone in this room is going to walk away and say construction is happening and it's so quiet and peaceful and all those structures are complete. I think what's fantastic about the California High-Speed Rail Authority is the clarity of our mission to complete a high-speed rail system from Los Angeles to San Francisco via the Central Valley. As the senator said, connecting all of the regions of California together. We are, as you know, have already initiated construction of this great system, a greenfield system to provide high-speed rail at speeds greater than 220 miles per hour. And we have three principles that are really underlying our approach to delivering this fine system. We want to initiate operations as soon as possible and get the proof of concept in place for Californians as soon as we can. But we're also making strategic concurrent investments throughout the state because we want Southern California and Northern California systems ready for high-speed rail as soon as possible. And then we want to be positioning ourselves to construct the rest of the system as we complete segments in the Central Valley. So let's dive into the significant progress in the Valley where we have 171 miles that are in design and in construction. 100% of that alignment is environmentally cleared and ready to go. We have, of course, 119 miles in construction. One segment, CP4, is substantially complete. And yes, thank you. That's a good round of applause to get to that milestone. And 52 miles are in advanced design, getting into the city of Merced and getting into the city of Bakersfield, those two population centers that really make our first operating segment work. And we are amidst completing 30% design for the 4 high-speed rail stations in the Central Valley. Our mission, our goal, our focus is an operating segment in time for service for passengers, and I'm sure everyone in this room wants to get on a train between 2030 and 2033. That's our window of time to get to an operating segment. We are also underway connecting. We want to be connecting the Central Valley not just to itself, which is critically important for the economy of the Valley, but also to Northern California and Southern California. The Northern California alignment is fully environmentally cleared. It's eligible to begin advanced design work, which we know is a critical activity to underlying the scope and getting clarity on our cost estimates. That segment for construction is unfunded, but we have critical partnerships at the portal and, of course, at Diridon Station. Making sure that the system works well with the Caltrain corridor and is ready to go as soon as possible. And in Southern California, we are continuing our environmental clearance throughout 2024. Next month, our board should vote to complete a record of decision on the Palmdale to Burbank alignment. I think you heard from Arthur yesterday just how important Palmdale is in the context of an interstate high-speed rail network. We're very pleased to be working closely on understanding how we can advance design at that Palmdale station. But the High Speed Rail Authority has also made important investments in the Rosecrans Marquardt grade separation, the busiest interchange in Southern California. That work is anticipated to be complete in 2025. And then the rest of the segment is unfunded, but we're working to find funds for advancing design and moving this work along and making sure we do have clarity on how we interconnect with Brightline, with the High Desert Corridor, so that we are building out this network of high-speed rail in Southern California. Now, I know all of you have already determined I am not Brian Kelly, but he's here in spirit. This is one event that he loves coming to because he understands that this is a room full of folks who are very focused on the mission and completing high-speed rail. I think the one word that sums up this slide is resilience, because if you look at the path over the last 6 years, you understand that we have had some great highs and we have had globally some pretty tough lows. The COVID-19 shutdown definitely impacted our progress on construction, but after that, we've recovered and gotten to the place where we are today, which is, again, substantially complete on one of our segments and moving forward the alignment to get to the operating segment. And I think one element to emphasize on this is, of course, the $3.1 billion from the FSP grant that we received in December of 2023. That has been a game changer in terms of our progress for the program. We have a legacy, sort of a DNA in the program. Since 2010, we've been grounded in our MOU and our relationships and our community benefits agreement to make sure that we're advancing our training opportunities for anyone, but very much giving special attention to our targeted workers and our workforce development and individuals who are disadvantaged workers. We've also complemented that initial MOU back from 2010, which really has informed how we've approached the work over the past 14 years. We've complemented that late last year with an MOU with 13 of the operating unions. I know you had a great panel yesterday afternoon focused on workforce development, really unpacking what that memorandum means and what that relationship means to building out our system over time and then operating that system with a quality workforce. We are also making sure that everyone understands so far there are 13,000 men and women jobs that have come because of high-speed rail. And in an operation will be focused on another 3,000 jobs. Governor Newsom celebrated a critical milestone this year, 10 years with the Cap and Trade program. Governor Newsom, under his watch, we have poured billions of dollars into energy efficiency, renewable energy projects, climate adaptation projects, and other projects, including high-speed rail, that are building out the economy and the infrastructure to make California carbon neutral to some pretty critical timescales. The women and the men who are constructing this project are a key focus of that work, and those jobs are an incredibly important early benefit associated with the project. The greenhouse gas emissions that will save in operation, the greenhouse gas emissions we're already offsetting and saving in construction are another core initial benefit that's resulting from the program. But as a recipient of 25% of the Cap and Trade proceeds, we understand how important it is to be making that investment in disadvantaged communities and making sure that paychecks are going into the hands of women and men who need it most and who are in the most vulnerable communities from a climate change perspective. We are also very committed to our small business program. More than 800 small businesses have participated in this program. We are very focused on making sure we're building up this cohort of businesses so that they are engaging in those wealth creation activities and growing the overall industry from logistics to engineering to data collection to environmental monitoring and planning and architectural services. All of these small businesses are benefiting, I know, because of the hard work of several primes who are in the room and the hard work of our committed project managers to make sure the project is moving along quickly. This is a very important slide. This receipt of $3 billion, $3.1 billion from the federal government is allowing the program to advance to operations. It has allowed us to initiate the procurement of electric high-speed rail trains that we will be testing and certifying later this decade to make sure that they are safe to operate at speeds of more than 220 miles an hour. Very critically, this is funding for both design and construction of the Fresno station. Thank you. I know how important the commitment has been to the Valley to make sure we're building out this system in advance and have a test track ready to run in 2028. And then, of course, the Merced extensions that get us to an operating segment. Here's a quick look. A quick look at our stations. These are the critical places that are connecting the citizens in the Central Valley, more than 4 million people, to the overall system and to each other. We are advancing this design work through to 30% designs this year, and then we'll be looking forward to moving along into construction after that. And what could be more exciting about the journey than the train sets and train set interiors? I know you had a very good panel yesterday. Well, okay, that's modest. Maybe there are other elements of the system more exciting, but the trains are where we take our journeys. This is how we get across the state of California. We've done quite a bit of focused work to understand and make sure that these train sets are accessible for all. We are on a path to an operating railroad, and we are very clear and anchoring ourselves in some core priorities, making sure that we have a clear definition of what we're building, making sure we are transparent and accountable to the stakeholders who are invested in this system, and making sure we set clear milestones and achieve the progress that we have articulated and bring integrity to what we're doing. This mega project delivery is crucial to realizing a high-speed rail system in California, and it's crucial to advancing the program overall. We've, under Brian's watch, been establishing realistic goals when it comes to schedule so that we are speaking with integrity to our core stakeholders. I know Brian would love to be here. This is a room he welcomes. This is a core set of people who understand how hard we've worked to get here. You understand the challenges that we've been overcoming in the past 6 years to get to this point where we are today, which is very much focused on the future progress of the overall system and getting to that operating segment and proof of high-speed rail in the United States. If we focus on the future, we're going to be relying on our strong team to continue to execute civil infrastructure construction and integrating our organization to get to an organization that is operating high-speed rail. And with that, I would love to hand it over to the panel.
So while our panel is assembling, I'll introduce myself. My name is James Fallows. It's most relevant that I am from San Bernardino County. I'm looking forward to riding this high-speed rail when it comes into work. And so my role for the next while will be to try to talk with these panelists about more of the implications of California. Loudly and speak softly and carry a big speak loudly and try to talk through the microphone. So yesterday we heard lots of exciting prospects about what high-speed rail means around the world and that it is coming to the United States and to California. I'm going to improvise here and just use turn this one off. So we heard many exciting prospects of what that could mean. I lived in China for a number of years and took the high-speed train between Shanghai and Beijing frequently, and the difference it makes is just profound. And we saw some implications from that from Europe and other parts of the world and bringing them here. We now turn to the most ambitious, most noted project in California, which of course is high-speed rail, California high-speed rail, as Senator Padilla and Meg Cederroth were introducing. And I'd like to start by asking the members of our panel to say a little bit more about why this matters, why it matters that California is undertaking this project, that it fulfill this project, what the project will mean when it is completed. And I'd like to do this in a regional, then statewide, then national perspective. I'd like to start regionally with Representative Costa, of course, who has been a long, as you heard, a long pioneer of high-speed rail in California, representing the Fresno area, and has been a visionary in this. Then again, I'll ask Meg Cedar-Roth about the statewide perspective, and then Secretary LaHood about the national perspective of why this project matters. So Representative Costa, why does it matter that California is undertaking this, from the regional perspective and what you've seen through your career in pioneering this project?
Well, thank you very much, and it's good to be here again. I think the first time I appeared with all of you was in 2009, 15 years ago, and obviously a lot's changed since then. I want to thank Senator Padilla for giving him the overview this morning on his perspective as United States Senator from California that obviously is a tremendous advocate for this project. I want to thank both Brian Kelly and his able staff. I think that we saw a real good opportunity here with Margaret's presentation that there's a lot of work's been going on, right? And my buddy, Ray LaHood, anytime I get a chance to meet with Ray, when he became Secretary of Transportation, which is another story, but I had the good fortune to learn from him, and he was one of my mentors in Congress, and I got really excited when he became Transportation Secretary. I said, Ray, do I have a project for you? And he really took well into it, and we thank you for your continued support and effort. I'm not so sure any other state, frankly, given the challenges we have dealt with in California over the last 15 years, could have embarked upon a project like this without the level of support by the federal government that we've seen in Europe and that we've seen in Asia. And let me be clear, California cannot do it alone, but we're sure making a hell of an effort. I've gotten both the blame and the credit for initiating this effort. I don't think either one are correct, but when I was trying to convince, especially my Republican colleagues, to support the bond measure in 2001, I love, like many of you, American history, world history, and Stephen Ambrose had come out with a book a few years ago called Nothing Like It in the World. I think I gave you that book, and I don't know how many copies of that book I bought, but every Republican in the legislature that was a key vote, I gave them that book and talked about, how big things are hard to do, and frankly, there's no book on how you build high-speed rail in America. And in California, we're writing that book. And so I think for the purpose of our conversation here this morning, and we're looking at 15 years later from our initial effort, which was after the voters of California passed the bond measure, $9.95 billion that we had put on the ballot by 54% of the vote. I think that was the number. It has not been easy. Let me just state that. We've learned a lot of things, trying to estimate costs, dealing with right-of-way. That route that Margaret laid out there, and maybe some of you are involved in the project have an understanding about this, but do you know how many parcels of land the High-Speed Rail Authority has had to secure to not only do the environmental work, but to satisfy the sellers on that? Anybody got a guess there? Huh?
A large number.
20? No, it's over 2,900 parcels, as small as a half an acre and as large as 200 acres. But think about negotiating with 2,900 individual property owners and dealing with, all the challenges and the lawsuits. And that was never anticipated in terms of the cost that would include in that. I mean, clearly, if you have a situation like the proposed route between Las Vegas and Rancho Cucamonga, where the state is providing a significant portion of the right-of-way along Route 15, that makes a difference. That makes a big difference. And so there are a lot of other factors here under the category of lessons to be learned. And James, what I'd like to do is we have this conversation, is the lessons to be learned, because I'll close on this note. Margaret talked about the cap and trade, and that was originally initiated under Governor Jerry Brown. And I've talked with Governor Newsom about this, we absolutely have to extend the cap and trade, assuming that we continue to get the 25% of the funding from that to 2050. If we're going to have, in my view, the steady revenue funding. I mean, you can quibble it this way, you can quibble it that way. And the other thing that we're going to need for all the other projects that are here, whether it's the Las Vegas, Washington, Oregon, Texas, Northeast Corridor, go down the list, to create this infrastructure of high-speed rail in America. As I talked to the president about this, and he says, Jim, I'm Amtrak Joe. I says, yeah, I know you're Amtrak Joe, but we're not building Amtrak here. And of course, that $3.2 billion was big. There were some that did not want to provide that funding to California. And I'm not going to go into all of the things, but God bless Nancy Pelosi and our combined efforts to make that happen. The fact is that we need to extend the cap and trade in California to continue to move along. We need to learn from some of the mistakes that we've had to painfully deal with in terms of getting right away and moving through in the structure, and keeping our projects in terms of a budget that we can stand behind. We've had a lot of criticism on our budget, as you know. And then finally, to build this network in America, we're going to have to do what they've done in Europe and in Asia. We're going to have to get a Congress, in the next Congress, and an administration that wants to provide a dedicated source of revenue, like the Federal Highway Fund, for a high-speed rail network in America. I mean, I just don't see how you build this without having a sense of revenue there. I mean, you just look at historically how we built the Transcontinental Railroad. You look at Eisenhower's efforts. That was part of a reason for part of the excuse was for defense purposes to build the interstate highway system during the Eisenhower. I mean, you've got to figure out there's a nexus on how we can get a regular source of funding, because California is a big state, but we cannot do this on our own. And I'll close on that note.
Thank you very much, Representative Costa, for broadening this to the challenges in the long run. And I'm going to follow up that in a moment with Secretary LaHood. I'd like to ask a California question to my microphone partner here, Ms. Cederroth. I'll pass it to you, and I'll set it up this way. We've seen around the world the ways in which high-speed rail can really shape regional or national identity. I used to live in Japan as well, and Japan would be profoundly different without the Shinkansen. The Shinkansen made Japan a nation in a way that it hadn't quite been before. California as a nation state figures in these contradictory ways in the national imagination. It has been the golden frontier. Our friend Kevin Starr had his book on Americans and the California Dream. It's often portrayed in a dystopian way too, for homelessness and congestion and housing prices and all the rest. Tell us why success in high-speed rail will matter to California, its sense of itself, its practicalities. Why does this matter for our home state?
Thank you. Well, of course, completing high-speed rail is going to be a sense of pride for Californians. Right? This is an important, big infrastructure project to get done. But specifically for Californians, you know, Congressman Costa very accurately pointed out that the Central Valley is the place we started. It's a place where we're putting up a test track in order to test the trains at the speeds we need to get them certified. But more importantly, we're connecting the Valley economy to itself. Merced and Bakersfield are now at least 3 hours by either train or car from each other. They don't necessarily see themselves as a region But there is a UC Merced, there's CSU Bakersfield, there's Fresno State. There are excellent excellent universities in the Central Valley. There is a thriving community in these cities that wants to diversify their economy, and that connectivity through high-speed rail is going to deliver that economic development and connectivity and mobility. But then as well, connecting to Silicon Valley, connecting into the LA basin, and having those journey times that are guaranteed means there's a far different concept of what it means to travel across the state.
And just one follow-up on that before turning to Secretary LaHood, which is California, as we know, is often thought of as having a north versus south divide, but actually it's coast versus interior, as we know, in terms of economic development and all the rest. Is there a prospect that high-speed rail will connect the different economies of California and housing and economic vitality and all the rest?
I think there's a very strong case for understanding that, as housing prices continue to accelerate in the state, there's an opportunity to build out housing adjacent to high-speed rail stations, use the high-speed rail system as an organizing principle for growth in the state, provide that opportunity for housing and jobs in the Central Valley, but enable people to also be very quickly connected to the economies in Northern and Southern California. And to your point, start to imagine new types of economies. Kern County is one of the greatest producers of renewable energy. There's an energy innovation center at CSU Bakersfield. There's an opportunity for Kern County and the citizens of Bakersfield to see a new set of industry developing up around high-speed rail. In Merced, around UC Merced, there's so much research happening relative to agricultural innovation. I think you will see quite a few new economies emerge because of high-speed rail.
Just add one other point, because that was part of the debate early on. The San Joaquin Valley that I have lived in all my life is a wonderful place to live. It's the largest agricultural area anywhere in the country, and it's oftentimes misunderstood. There were those who argued that we moved the corridor from the Bay Area along I-5, along the coastal mountain ranges, and we would have avoided many of the challenges on all the parcels and the right-of-way. But I fought that very hard, and others did, because frankly, the 4 million people that live in the valley live along as you can see, the route that Margaret showed on her slide, along the Highway 99 corridor. And so if this is going to be a game changer for the valley, and the valley oftentimes gets looked at as the stepchild, I hate to use that analogy, then we wanted to be connected, and we wanted to have the state-of-art system that ran through the heart, the artery of the valley, that would then connect you to the major metropolitan areas, the economic centers of Southern California and the Bay Area. So I think that's important to note. It didn't come without a lot of costs, though, and struggle.
I'll take the microphone again. So, Secretary LaHood, you've seen these efforts in California. You've been a crucial champion nationwide. Why, from the national and international perspective, does what California is doing matter?
Well, Jim, thank you for moderating this panel, and thank you all that are gathered here again this morning for coming back. As I told you yesterday, you are really important partners in everything that we do from this point forward. When President Obama became president and arrived in Washington, D.C. with his vice presidential nominee, Joe Biden, they arrived on an Amtrak train. And as some of you know, President Obama was United States Senator from Illinois, which is a very, very train-centric state. When he was in the legislature in Springfield, he would ride the Amtrak train from Chicago to Springfield, Illinois. And he wanted to send a message along with the vice president. When they arrived in Washington, they didn't come by car. And they didn't come by plane. They came by train. And that, to me, set the bar about as high as you can get it when the Congress passed an $870 billion economic stimulus bill. 48 billion came to the Department of Transportation, 8 billion designated for high-speed rail. That's 8 billion times more than ever been spent on high-speed rail, except for what we're doing today. And so I say all of that because, Jim, the point is, without the national government taking the initiative, without the national government in China, Japan, Europe, that's why they have good trains, comfortable trains, affordable trains, because the national government set the standard, put forth the money, just as the Obama-Biden administration did. And clearly, when President Biden, with the help of people like Jim Costa and others, really decided to pass a significant transportation bill, not just for roads and bridges, not just for airports, not just for ports, billions of dollars for rail, because again, of their vision that the national government has to be able to step up to lead the initiative for high-speed rail. And that's why we're in the position we are in today, because of that leadership. And we took the example of Europe and Asia, China, and other parts of the world that have much better trains than we do. But we are going to lead the way at some point here, from California to Las Vegas to Dallas to Houston and so forth. The 5 people that have made the California project possible: number one, President Obama putting $8 billion in the bill. Number 2, Governor Jerry Brown stepping up and say, I'll take the money. We want high-speed rail. We want to get people out of their cars. We want to clean the environment. Governor Brown was an extraordinary leader. Jim Costa, when he was in the Assembly in California, has led the way on this. Nancy Pelosi from San Francisco. When I came into the job in '09, she came to me and said, we want to get started with high-speed rail. We want to do it in San Francisco. We need $450 million for Transbay, and we made that happen. And the mayor of San Francisco, on the day that we launched Transbay and announced that money, was Gavin Newsom. So look, these are extraordinary leaders, and California wouldn't be where it's at without the kind of vision and leadership of the people that I just mentioned. And I'm very happy the California Assembly, as Jim has mentioned a couple of times, came up with an enormous amount of money. Again, thanks to Governor Brown's initiative, carried on by Governor Newsom. That's what it takes. If people say to you, how do we get rail? You got to have leadership at the top. We have it now in Washington. We need it in the states in order to complete what's been started in California, in Nevada. We need it in Texas to jumpstart that project. And I know that some of you are working on that. The Cascadia project has great potential, and there are lots of other places around the country. Thanks, Jim, for asking the question.
Thanks, and I love the idea of that 5-person Mount Rushmore for California high-speed rail. When my wife Deb and I were traveling all around the country, I'll say in our little tiny propeller plane as opposed to high-speed rail, learning about different states, we'd often ask people if there were a Mount Rushmore of New Jersey, if there were a Mount Rushmore of Kentucky, who would be on it? So it's very useful to know the 5-person Mount Rushmore, one of whose members we have here sitting with us, of California high-speed rail. I'd like to ask again in the same order in the panel. I'm going to start with you, Meg, in your role as the virtual Brian Kelly. One of the things he said in his wrappings up of his time at High Speed Rail is that he has brought a certain clarity and rationality to budget issues and to scheduling issues. Can you tell us what is the rationality he brought to both of those issues? What is now clear to California High-Speed Rail that might not have been clear on the budget front and the schedule front?
Great question. I also think you maybe just, I think Secretary LaHood just identified some names that can go on the first 6 train sets that we're currently procuring. But I think what Brian brought in terms of clarity was a focus on where we could take the funds in hand, where the work was underway, and get to not just a test track, which we understand the importance of testing trains and getting them certified, but get an operating segment that goes from population center to population center. So one of the first things he did was, grill staff across the organization and understand where we could take our budget to get to an operating segment as soon as possible. He also brought a very important focus on our first order of operations activities, because getting our design done, knowing what our risks are in a much more concrete way, helps us to move on the right-of-way that Congressman Costa identified. The greater clarity we have about that, the greater clarity we have about how to get our parcels cleared and get work underway so that our contractors can move quickly, helps the program move quickly overall. And then the focus on design work across the state means we understand how to get through to the Tehachapis and how to get through the San Gabriels to take that initial trunk line and then connect it into Northern and Southern California.
Thank you very much. So Representative Costa, I would like, if you would, to follow up on what Secretary LaHood was saying about the sort of ways to mobilize political support for these long-term projects, where it's a matter of paying now for some rewards that will come 15, 20, 25 years from now. What are the lessons you have about political vision, political compromise of forging a long-term bipartisan support that's necessary for these kinds of projects? Use both of them.
You could use both.
In stereo. Anyhow, my friend, Speaker Emeritus Nancy Pelosi likes to quote Abraham Lincoln, which is, when you have political will, anything is possible, and without it, you might as well forget it. Again, getting back to history, on July 1, I think it was, 1863, in the middle of the Civil War, inflation running rampant, but Lincoln trying to keep the country together, he signed the Transcontinental Railroad Act. Think about that, July 1st, 1863. Can you see in today's day and age with cable networks and podcasts and social media? Good idea, Abe, but why don't you wait till your second term? Of course, he really didn't get to fill his second term out. So we were fortunate that we had a combination of leaders from Speaker Willie Brown and John Burton and a lot of other folks that really believed in wanting to move California forward on high-speed rail. And so that helped and in terms of the political will. But, we looked at the systems in Europe and in Japan and thought we had done our due diligence in ways in terms of where you would have the population densities to set corridors, in ways in which you'd look at certain technologies, i.e. steel on rail or maglev, that would best fit the needs of California. But it gets back down to having a consistent amount of money. And Jerry Brown, to raise comment, was all in. And he really, this was something that he understood. He had a keen interest in history. His family were a part of the settlers that came to California during the gold rush. And so you had that synergy that was moving things along. California benefited, as Ray noted. President Obama put the $8 billion up there, and it was split between 5 states, I think, initially, Wisconsin and Ohio and Florida and California, and I forget which the other 2 states were. But we started off with, I think, $1.2 billion, and when the governors of Wisconsin, Ohio, and Florida said that they didn't want the money, we said, fine, we'll take it. And Ray was very helpful, and so we ended up getting almost half the funding, I think, for the original segment. But all of these things have a different journey, a different path. Let me make one other point, because it gets back to the 2,900 parcels that we had. There was opposition through all of that to kill high-speed rail in California. Let's be clear about that. And it was a organized effort with some considerable financial support to stop the construction of high-speed rail. And one of the ways that they strategized to do that, besides a legal strategy, was to make it really difficult to acquire the parcels. And then they argued, you'll love this, it says, you know, this project's flawed from the beginning to the end. You're not meeting your budgets, and you're terribly over on your cost overruns. Well, yeah, if you're suing us every step of the way, you're delaying us, and of course, not only that, but you're requiring us to spend a whole lot more money than we had initially intended. This is all the challenges. This is all in the book that we're writing, that lessons to be learned on how you build high-speed rail in America, absent the kind of commitment that Ray noted in Europe and in Asia, where you have this overwhelming determination that we're going to just do this, and we have the funding, and we're going to make it happen.
I love the idea of California writing the book, and I'll use this as a segue to another question for Secretary LaHood, again asking you the national perspective and sort of the past and future perspective. As you're well aware, there are contradictory tensions in politics. On the one hand, everybody thinks local spending is good. On the other hand, they think microphones that work are good. Microphones that fail are part of reality. So there's that contradiction. There's also the fact that automatic funding sources become not noticed anymore. Highway funding is more or less automatic. Airport funding is more or less automatic. Every gallon of aviation gas has a tax in it. What is a way that the United States in the long run can resolve these contradictions? People don't like spending except where they are. They will spend in the long run only if they don't notice it. What's the way to have long-term national underwriting for these national projects?
Well, I think it has to be done legislatively, and I think at some point all of these people gathered here become a part of a high-speed rail team of people from all over the country that help us persuade Congress in the next transportation bill. There needs to be a title for high-speed rail. There needs to be a pot of money. You can't just ask for the money. I think Congressman Larson said it very well yesterday. He's the ranking member on the Transportation Committee. You can't just ask Congress for money. You have to have a plan. Where's the money going to be spent? And are they prepared? Are they ready? Are these parts of the country, whether it's in Texas or Illinois, the Northeast Corridor, the South, are they ready with plans? And that's where we need your help. So the next step really is to put forth a plan where high-speed rail can begin and be completed. How much money does it cost? And then begin to stage it, but then say to Congress, here's the plan where the money will be spent, here's the commitment, and here's how much we need over. Ordinarily, a transportation bill would be 4 or 5 years. And that's really the next step for all of us, Jim. It really is. We've come a long way. I was with Jim in the meeting in 2009 when Andy invited us to come and talk about high-speed rail. And as I told you yesterday, there were no more than about 12 people in that room. Look at the room today. Look what we have built in America, all of us together. And the next step is to continue the momentum with a plan and then going to Congress and building the momentum for a pot of money in the transportation bill designated for high-speed rail, using California as the model for how you get it done.
Excellent, thank you. I have one more lightning round question for our panelists before having time for a question or two from the audience. Here in Washington, D.C., many of you know there is a metro system. When that was being built in the 1970s, everybody hated the fact that the streets were all torn up, and it was Connecticut Avenue was the street of wooden pavement. Then once it opened, suddenly you go every place. There will come a transition moment like that for California's high-speed rail, and people say, oh, this works. When and how do you imagine that happening? What will be the moment when you think, okay, suddenly this lets me do something I couldn't do before?
Well, I think the first moment is when we start testing trains, because you'll be able to stand in a Fresno station or stand on the Hanford Viaduct and see a train go by at 220 miles per hour, right? That's not something we see right now. I think that's going to be a crucial moment for the system.
I would concur. And one other thing, I'm always looking for ways to bring other people engaged that maybe have a different point of view, but they would receive a benefit. One of the things that Margaret's finding, and as we're building out the corridor through the valley, there were a lot of mid-sized cities of 50,000, 80,000 that did not want high-speed rail going through their city. And so after negotiations and other kinds of things, they basically avoided those. One of those cities that really thought this was a crazy idea, that this was an opportunity, was the city of Fresno. We had 6 major road corridors that were 4- and 6-lane corridors that crossed the Union Pacific tracks. I can promise you, for any experience that maybe you have had, maybe it's different where you're working, but we don't get a lot of welcoming from our major railroads to build grade corridor separations in California. But yet they need them, and they're an important public safety, and they deal with air quality because, you know, you're not waiting for a 60-car train to go through. Well, Fresno and the neighboring cities that chose not to, but Fresno is getting 6 brand new grade corridor separations that are really basically financed by high-speed rail that they would not have gotten otherwise. And that's going to reduce traffic, reduce air pollution. And so I think that to the degree that we can find partners on these kinds of things that people don't think about in those ways, you know, we can potentially get greater support for broadening funding participation.
Jim, I think Meg probably hit it. Once people get on the train, ride the train, boom, that's it. And Brightline in Florida is the classic example of that. Well oversubscribed. People love Brightline from Miami to Orlando. Why? Because it gets them off the road, it's affordable, it's comfortable, it's on time, and it's a classic case. If you build it, they will come. And that is it. That is it. So I think once people in California get on a 200-mile-an-hour train, boom, that's it. They'll be convinced, and they'll know that their money's been well spent.
So hold on just a second, please. Okay, yes.
I guess my question is the trade-offs that the California has had between connecting the communities of the Central Valley, which I think is critical, and obviously the choice that we've made, and a good choice. A lot of people I love will be connected by that choice. But also the trade-offs of cost and time, which are sort of disappointingly expensive and slow. I guess as we look to nationalize the program and have a network and all the rest of it, would you advise other communities that are looking at those Project IDs program that we learned a lot about yesterday, would you recommend the same kind of choices that California's made, or should we look for directly acquiring freight railroads like, say, Brightline has done in Florida as an option, or using existing corridors, or regulating freight railroads in different ways to make them more amenable to the changes that we need? How do we speed it up?
Well, I think that's a good question. And given our experience, I don't think there's one size that fits all. There are some areas where there's existing corridors that you can parallel. I always thought we should have tried to use more of State Route Highway 99 on the existing corridor on either side of the freeway that the state of California already owned. I kept getting pushed back by saying that Highway 99 doesn't go straight, and so but I think there are different opportunities that you have to look at, and in some cases where you have very sparse population, if you're some of these quarters in some of these states, it probably makes sense to try to avoid in terms of the cost factor to build per mile. When Lincoln signed that legislation, they paid so much a mile for flat land, so much a mile for mountainous conditions, and then they got a section every mile. I think most of us in this room could figure out a way to finance a project like that if we got a section of land every mile, and so much per mile in terms of the construction, whether it's flat land or mountainous. But I mean, you got to think in ways, I think, that take advantage of opportunities is what I'm trying to say.
In our minute left. Well, I think you've been very eloquent about what some of those trade-offs are, but what I've found when we've been engaged with the community, we did open houses throughout the Central Valley when we were unveiling the station concepts over the last 2 weeks. And what you find is that the willingness of communities in California to understand how important this system is to changing their communities for the better. And the more we take the lessons we've learned, the more we take the maturity of this process to date and understand how to pivot that into more effective construction and get the system done and get the system connected across the population centers in California, I think the sooner everyone will see the benefit and understand and feel and witness the benefit that high-speed rail can bring.
So with that, I'd like you to share my excitement for the California High-Speed Rail Project and to join me in giving thanks to Secretary Ray LaHood, Representative Jim Costa, and Meg Cedar-Roth. Thank you.